Let's get started in 3, 2, 1. Welcome! Sorry. Something literally got stuck in my throat. Oh, that's the first time that's ever happened. Welcome to the MoxStars podcast. I am Menace, one of your hosts, and I'm here with the indestructible Christopher Ritter.
So not one of the ones that you think is better, like Ward or something like that. Indestructible. You're going with indestructible. The effect that you think sucks.
No, I said that off the record. I didn't say it. I'm just admitting guilt.
We have beef. We got beef.
I'll call you Trample. Do you want to be known as Trample? Single name like Seal, but
okay. I don't know. Let's think about it.
All right. And today we have a very special guest here to unfold and unfurl his theories and strategies of Dargo. We have Guy, like the word.
What's up, y'all? How we doing?
Welcome to the show, Guy. We're so happy to have you, and we're excited to hear your process, my guy. But before we get into that, if you'd like to support the show, you can do so by finding us on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube right now, you can see our page and see that, our subscriber base has grown slightly. Ritter, thank you so much for being on last week's episode. You could
Did we grow or just not lose the one person?
No, we grew. We actively grew because you were on the episode.
Okay, I'll take it.
Yeah, there we go. And you can also find us on all major podcasting platforms where you can leave us a 5-star review, make us look super duper cool. You can join our Discord community server where we're having conversations about all these Modern Horizons 3 leaks that seem to be, popping up on the daily. And you can also find us on Patreon, where for $3 a month, you become an official Pepperhead, or like our Cherry Vanilla Pepperhead, UWP Quart, for $5 a month, you can become a super supporter. And along with your Patreon subscription, you get, as an official Pepperhead, free entry into our bi-weekly giveaways. And as a Cherry Vanilla Pepperhead, you get 2 free entries. So this week's giveaway, we're giving away an original MoxStars playmat signed by myself, Menace. I put it right there. It looks super cool. This week's giveaway, I'm delaying once. We're going to give it away next week, but that gives everybody who is a patron an additional opportunity to enter. And if you would like to gain additional entries into this one, increase your chances, leave another comment on this YouTube video with your favorite Modern Horizons 3 card that we're going to be talking about today. So let's roll right into it. All of these Modern Horizons 3 leaks have been coming out, and they are spicy. So, Ritter, have you been paying much attention to this? Have you been kind of like seeing these as they come out?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few that have jumped out at me. There's, we're still in the stage where it's like, all right, is this a real one or a fake one? There were a couple ones that were like exciting, and then it was like, no, they're fake.
Yeah, and the thing is that I feel like there were so many fakes, and there were so many, like, what ultimately happened is that Wizards of the Coast yesterday came out and just gave us spoilers ahead of schedule because so many of these cards had leaked, and so now we actually have official spoilers. And Mythic Spoiler don't really like to post the potato photo quality pictures because so many do happen to be fake. So they waited until Wizards of the Coast made them official. So here we have official spoilers, and first, I think, is a very interesting card, potentially the best stacks piece we've seen in a while. Guy, you're going to have to give me your 2 cents on this one. Winter Moon, a two colorless mana artifact that says players can't untap more than one non-basic land during their untap steps.
I think this is actually a pretty fun card for mono colored decks and some low colored decks. I know that there's a Ragged Draga player that I'm aware of that would probably like this card a lot because they already play Winter Orb.
Yeah.
With the thought process of, I got Dorks to untap, so eat it. So yeah, I think monocolored decks probably play this a lot, and some two color decks that are more stacks oriented probably play this, and maybe some three color stacks list, but probably not too many.
Yeah, this is like one of those. So it's not an orb specifically, because a lot of those orbs will say that if it is tapped, like the effect is negated, and
Yep.
without a better way to say that. So like Urza likes to take advantage of those cards so that they can like untap in full versus everybody else is stuck like with their lands tapped. This Urza will maybe run this. They don't really have a problem with it either, because even though you tap it for mana, you're not turning it on or off. It fits a very like fine niche where I think that if you're wanting to play this, you can actually prioritize basic lands as long as you're not playing any like Tainted Pact lines or whatever. So this is it's a really great stacks card that is going to break parity on a game, like in great. I am not looking forward to my first time playing against it, is ultimately what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I'm way too greedy of a player to put basics in my three color deck. So I have this card if I don't advance my artifacts fast enough, I probably get blown out by this card against monocolor decks.
Yeah.
Well, what decks do you think actually want to play it? Because it's hard, it's not hard to make it asymmetrical, but Magda.
I think Magda plays this because Magda runs a lot of basic lands, and it's easily tutorable off of Magda.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably Godo plays this. Godo it can be extremely quick, but just having another stacks piece in there that slows everybody else down because you pretty much just play mountains pretty good. Yeah. I don't know. I think there's still valid players out there. They probably play this.
Yeah, you really have to find a slot for it where it doesn't slow you down, but actively puts the game under your control. So I like obviously monocolor decks. I think most monocolor decks want this, and like you said, some. I wonder if Kinnan plays this. Like,
I could see Kinnan playing this. Like you said, it probably changes up their fetches a little bit, but like that's not like the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, I mean their fetches don't enter tapped, and they can still use it. They can still it changes up, like do they go for a forest or an island? But like if this comes down, they have so much like ramp as far as dorks and rocks and everything goes that this probably won't affect them like at all.
No, absolutely.
So,
I think they play Trinisphere, right? So like they probably could also like play this pretty comfortably. I know those are two completely different effects, but like it's one of those effects that hit people in the same way, and if you can play around one, you can play around the other.
Yeah, where Kinnan felt like unstoppable already. Like imagine just being helpless watching as you can't untap your City of Brass because like Kinnan has just got the game locked down. That's where I see it is maybe the best deck it could fit into. Because
I think so, especially against mid-range decks, right? I think this probably doesn't do a lot, and I've noticed this playing Dargo Ikra when somebody resolved the Winter Orb, that it really doesn't slow turbo decks down much, because they're usually only playing one or two lands.
Right.
So that's something I think to keep in mind with this particular card. It's really good in the current meta right now, but if we start speeding up, like maybe not.
I mean, this has the potential to murder the mid-range mindset.
It can.
Like
it can, because you are now. Yeah, I think I want to see how it plays out, because like we don't see much Winter Orb as is. Like it's just not a card I see very often.
Mm-hmm.
So outside of like monocolor decks, I wonder how this will turn out. I think because I still think when I say you can run it in something like Magda, like would you, when you're playing Magda and you're activating Magda for a stacks piece, would you rather get this or would you rather get Hanglewire, right?
Oh, sure. That's a good point.
So there's I think it's going to be good, and I don't think it's going to be a hard staple, but I think it's going to be good, and I think it will deservedly be tested. I think a lot of people will see how it does. I'm interested to see how things shake up around it, see if it's really super impactful or if it's just kind of falls just shy.
Yeah, it'll be regardless. It has a lot of potential. Where it goes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited to see. With the set, with all these official spoilers, we are getting now the official nod that we're getting reprints of Orum's Chant and Sylvan Safekeeper, 2 staples in both colors. But then there's a new card that's popping up that could or could not be impactful. At uncommon, we have Null Elemental Blast for 1 colorless mana, an instant speed, choose 1, counter target multicolored spell, or destroy target multicolored permanent. I think this one is very exciting because it reads like Red Elemental Blast, where that card is usually a staple. Anything red, like Red Elemental Blast or Pyroblast, usually find their way into the list because it is essentially a counterspell. And this finds its home is much more niche than that, where we had sort of talked about off the record what Wash Away does in the format, where for 1 blue mana you can counter something that hasn't been cast from their hand, or spend the full 3 mana and cleave it and counter any spell unconditionally. This doesn't have that like range of flexibility, but Wash Away is really good in Commander. It counters a commander outright. Null Elemental Blast sort of like fills that same space where it says I can counter or destroy a commander, is kind of like where my head goes with this. And there are certain cards that it doesn't really touch that are absolute staples in the format. Like this doesn't touch Heuristic Study. This doesn't touch an Underworld Breach. So I really wonder if this sees play, or does it just end up in like your bulk bin?
I think it'll some decks will probably test it. I think Godo tries it. I think because like it could potentially do something. It kills a Kinnan, it kills a Tymna, which isn't irrelevant.
True.
Tymna draws just tons and tons of cards and probably goes more unpunished than it really should. But outside of that, like what deck runs this that can't already do that?
Yeah,
I think it's super narrow, and I think certain decks will test it. Godo probably tests it again, but I think it might just be a smidge narrow.
Yeah, we might just be finding out how hard it is to achieve the casting cost of colorless mana. If it was just like the 1 in the gray circle, then like any mana of any sort, great. But what this does, and I think that if it does see play, and it proves that it's good enough, will give purpose to your utility lands that don't offer anything outside of like an effect. Like, God, what's that? The Fomori Vault, something like that in artifact heavy like decks that want a way to dig, and then now they have a way to like use that colorless mana to pay for what essentially would be a counter spell. So it's a card very interesting in the design space because we're getting a lot of Eldrazi stuff. So intriguing to me. I wonder if we'll get a Eldrazi spirit guide, something to give us a colorless mana by exiling it from our hand. Who knows? That's on my dangerous. That's on my dream list.
I mean, that's literally like free mana for any deck.
No, you gotta make it more Eldrazi. You can exile it, and if you control Eldrazi, you get 2.
Well, let's make it a 5/5 for 7 colorless mana. That has the effect that you can exile it from your hand to add a colorless mana. What's more Eldrazi than that?
I mean, yeah, that is. Oh, man. It would be a must-play card for sure.
Yeah.
Did you know that Jund can turbo turn 0 or can turbo out Adnos on turn 0?
I mean, in Christmas land situations, I do not doubt it.
Super Christmas land situations. But yeah, it doesn't need any help. This card isn't necessary.
Well, it'd be like one of those things where lists are already super tight, right? In cEDH.
Yeah.
So would a colorless, one free colorless mana, a one-time use, be enough to see play? Like we already saw how dangerous Simian Spirit Guide was for Modern, right? Is that still limited to 1? Do we know?
I don't know. I don't play Modern.
No idea.
All right, but I feel like a colorless mana. Actually, you're right. It might be too dangerous to print something like that, considering that artifacts.
I mean, it's free mana.
Yeah. Well, at the cost of hand size and
that's fair.
Hand advantage. So I don't know. You might have to make it 2 colorless mana to be an Eldrazi Spirit Guide.
Yeah.
So
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so there is another new hate bear, you could say, spoiled in the set, and I wonder how good of a stacks piece this will be. But it's Kudo, King Among Bears, for a green and a white. This Selesnya legendary creature bear is a 2/2 that says other creatures have base power and toughness 2/2 and are bears in addition to their other types. Wow. I actually really I wonder what, that's what the reason I want to talk about is how good of a stacks piece is this?
I think it's a good enabler.
Yeah. Does it do more than that? I don't know. I don't
think it's
so.
a bear on its own.
Right.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's like as a dedicated stacks piece, it's not incredible, but the way it can enable some incredibly strong stacks plans is unreal, right? Like, sure, most things out there are 2/2s anyways, but I don't know, man, turbo out an Elish Norn and just turn the board into just clear the board out and beat face with a bunch of 4/4s.
Yeah, nobody has creatures.
Yeah, it's pretty good. You can you're in the perfect colors for enchantments. You can turbo or go find that world enchantment that turns all lands into 1/1s. Just nobody gets to play the game while you beat them to death with 4/4s, including your lands. This has the potential to be an incredible stacks enabler. Or even if you just went with what's that card? Delny, put Delny, and all of a sudden everything that has a trigger on it triggers twice.
Oh, that's a good shout. Yeah, Delny be crazy in here.
So yeah, I mean, I think it has the potential. I just don't have the brain space to try to figure it out.
Right. It would take some effort for sure.
Definitely. All
right. So not great, but potential. There is a super cute corgi that was announced. We'll talk about that on a different day. The last card I want to talk about today is Chthonian Nightmare, a card that everybody in cEDH is very excited about. It is 1 in a black mana enchantment. Whenever Chthonian Nightmare enters the battlefield, you get 3 energy, pay X and an energy, sacrifice a creature, return Chthonian Nightmare to its owner's hand, return target creature card with mana value X from your graveyard to the battlefield, activate only as a sorcery. And if you listeners out there have paid attention to the show in any way, may have said that Dockside Extortionist is the best card in Magic, and this just makes it even better. We're back, baby. Dockside season, we finally broke Dockside, and
we did it, guys.
Yes,
congratulations, Magic. We did it.
Thank you, Wizards of the Coast, for giving this blessing. This makes Rakdos decks more viable, I feel like. We're going to be seeing a lot of Chthonian Nightmare being tested out to see if it actually makes the cuts. Guy, we were talking a little off the record on some of the loops that are being seen right now, and you think this is great for Dargo, right off the bat.
I think Dargo is a great enabler for it. I'm apprehensive for it in Dargo and Dargo Timna. There are probably the variants that want to run like what's it called? Mayhem Devil or professional Facebreaker, the more Timna oriented variants probably like this a little bit better than I do. But I think it's a really good Dargo enabler in the sense that, you know, it can kill the dockside, put it in the bin, and then Dargo can be the sack creature to the Chthonian Nightmare to put Chthonian Nightmare and get dockside back. And as long as you're making 3, 4, 5 treasures, you're there. Like you got infinite treasures. You just need the outlet.
Yeah, I think the smallest amount people have figured out is 4. Like if like there's a loop where if you just had 4 treasures generated, it goes infinite. And as far as like infinite storm count, you don't generate any positive mana. But yeah,
I think with 4 you can get there if you are because you need a 0 mana creature.
Yeah,
so you need like Rograk. Yeah, because you need the creatures. I was gonna say somebody figured out like an Infernal Plunge loop, but then like they also need a Rograk involved or something like that, and that can do it for 4 mana. But like now you need a Rograk deck that has black, but also has a treasure outlet, and that like, you're just jumping through a bunch of hoops for something that's
right, for a trick where I mean before we've seen dockside loops that like 6 is usually the magic number, like Temur Sabertooth and whatnot. But yeah, this card is probably like a 9 out of 10 for me. It's not perfect, but it is very, very, very powerful. The honest Magic player in me wants to just, reanimate something stupid with this, something not dockside. But I know that that's going to be its main purpose. Is it and there is a nuance to the rules text here. Sacrifice a creature. It doesn't say non-token creature, so token creatures are totally acceptable here. The one thing that we can see like immediately in cEDH is like Forbidden Orchard is going to give people spirits, and like that gives cause to maybe be more wary about if they're playing anything like sprinkling like black in their color pie or whatever. I don't think that you actively give those players tokens to mess with anymore. Like you'd be giving them to other players to continue to punish anybody playing black.
I mean, I'm already pretty low on Forbidden Orchard as it is. I try to exclude it from as many decks as possible because there's just too many things that like Forbidden Orchard, right? Like Timna, like you can't give it to the Timna player, right? Because Timna attacker. You can't give it to the green player because they're all playing Gaia's Cradle, right? So like, who do you give it to?
And they're all playing Eldritch.
There's enough like clean 5-color lands that you don't necessarily need to consider Forbidden Orchard that often.
For sure. Plus, like you're running into you're running enough fetches anyways. Like, we'll just run a fetch, right?
Sure. Yeah. I agree. Even though I do love the card and I have niche uses for it.
It's a great budget card. Like, it's not like everyone can afford a Tarnished Citadel for every deck, right?
It's true.
That
I will say
very
that
fair.
I think I still run it in Dargo Thras because it turns on Blasphemous Act. It's a really bad reason to run it, but
not as bad as my reason.
No, I took it out. That thing's gone.
I literally have it for like I run it in Shalai and Halar because I'm also running Authority of the Consuls and Heliod. So the dream scenario is that I put Heliod and Shalai and Halar out, and then I tap the Forbidden Orchard. So 3 pieces need to be out: Authority of the Consuls, Heliod, Shalai and Halar. And then I tap Forbidden Orchard, give the opponent a creature. I gain a life. On that Heliod trigger to put a +1/+1 counter on something, I give Shalai and Halar lifelink.
That is an incredible number of steps.
Woo! I told you mine was way more stupid than yours.
I love, no, don't get me wrong. I love a good Rube Goldberg machine. Imperial Recruiter is that Rube Goldberg machine for me.
Yeah, as Ritter will say, that is what I'm the master of in Magic.
The more steps, the better. That's when you're the most powerful.
Yeah, that's when people start worrying.
Real good.
Yeah. Oh, dude, you're telling me. I've won one game off of that loop in cEDH, like with Shalai and Halar. So it hasn't been proven to be totally useless. It's just like turn one authority, build the game and the board state up, and then it finally triggers, and I'm just like, oh yeah, feels so good. All right. Modern Horizons 3 set coming out soon. I don't have the exact date in front of me, but these cards are looking good. There's some commander cards here as well. Nothing really worth talking about at the moment. And I'm sure you'll be hearing a lot more from us about this set as we go forward, especially with that, flare of whatever cycle. But let's get into today's main subject. We're going to hand the reins over to Guy here, and we're going to go through a little bit of Dargo theory. So here we go. Guy, I've got you on now on the screen share. So whenever you're ready and you want to get it started, take it away.
Sure. Sounds good. Yeah. So you have the list up already?
I do.
Perfect. Awesome. So this is my Dargo Thrasios list. So I before I guess I get too deep into that, like why Dargo, right? Like what does Dargo do? And the thing that Dargo really does is he's a ritual and he's a combo piece, and he just enables some really dumb stuff, right? He's a 7 mana 7/5 with trample. Usually none of that matters. The part that matters the most on him is as an additional cost, you can sacrifice any number of creatures or artifacts, and he becomes 2 colorless mana-less cost for the rest of that turn, for each one that's sacrificed. Which means we usually get to turn them into a 1 mana 7/5 that we can run through things like Greater Good, or turn them into a ritual with something like Burnt Offering, make 7 mana for 1. Just really enables some really dumb stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I can see right away you have like Tinderwall and like Ragavan for treasures, and it's notable to say that Dargo can also eat like stagnant artifacts and eat creatures that don't have purpose outside of anything else. Their purpose is done. You can eat it. Absolutely.
Like a lot of the creatures that we run in these decks, we're really running for the ETBs. Once they've landed, there's not much else to do with them, right? Like Ragavan is really about the only one that we want to keep around for a little while in Con Sphinx. The rest of them are pretty much just win the game cards. So yeah, they get to serve double duty. I don't really run too much of a dork package in this. I find the dork package to be a little bit slow. But I do run what I consider to be the good ones. The good ones being Birds of Paradise and Ragavan, right?
Yeah, the 2 best ones.
The 2 best ones. If we had black, we would run Deathrite, because Deathrite's the 3rd best one, and there's an argument to be made for the halfling. The delighted halfling's pretty good, but yeah. The theory that I take with this deck is I want mana that when I put it down, I get to use it that turn, unless it gives me mana of any color. And Birds does that for me. Aside from that, I just run the talismans. I run Felwar Stone. I run mana that works immediately. Tinderwall, another great, probably the best ritual for Dargo, because it makes Dargo it's basically 4 Dargo mana, or it can cast my Dockside, right? So super fun guy there.
Yeah, it casts your Dockside and then it reduces Dargo's cost by 2. Like that also seems like the best dork, like a really great dork.
Super good dork. A harder to counter ritual, right? Like, yeah, you can still hit it with and it has happened to me. You can still hit it with what's that card? Mental Misstep, but that's really about most ways anybody's ever willing to interact with this card.
Sure.
Then I'm running the typical dork pack, or the typical clone package, Flesh Duplicate, Physmage, Phyrexian Metamorph. Got the Spirit Guides, and then we got Ewit, Spellseeker, Imperial Recruiter, and Displacer Kitten. Those are kind of a self-contained combo that also just works really good with what the rest of the deck does. We get to replay a lot of cards with Ewit. Spellseeker gets us pretty much half of, if not all of our win conditions. So overall super good. And then, Tidespout and Temur Sabertooth, the two of the win cons for the deck.
Sure. Yeah, I imagine that when Tidespout comes down, the game is over.
Yeah, no, for sure. Consphinx has been really good. I'm running it over Seedborn at the moment. Seedborn really good when you're on the Thrasios variant of the deck. This one we're really more proactive than that. I think we're more interested on the Dargo plan.
Sure.
So we don't run a whole lot of dorks. We don't run Seedborn. Consphinx takes just as much energy to get set up and immediately draws us 6 cards a turn cycle. So we like him a little bit better. Sorceries, we get your typical sorcery package. Notable inclusion, Life's Legacy. We are one of the few decks that gets to play Life's Legacy.
Yeah, and have it be super effective.
Yeah.
I've seen you go off with that.
Yeah, definitely. And then, Neoform Eldritch Evolutions are basically, turn Dargo into Tidespout Tyrant. So, you get a dock side of 5, 6, 7, 8, I think. So I have it all in my primer, but there's let me see it real fast.
Damn, you wrote a novel.
I did. I wrote a full novel. So yeah, Dockside plus Neoform is basically Temur +1 with a Dockside count of 4. You just win the game. So I have all my combos broken down. The mana necessary for each of them. The only deck that I've done that far for them so far for the most part. But yeah.
Yeah. So you've played Dargo not just in like Temur alone, which you were saying earlier, Deathrite is probably one of the best like dorks in the game. You've also played Dargo in Jund variants as well, right?
Yeah. So right now, Temur was the deck that kind of got me into Dargo, and then Dargo Tymna got me to stay, and Dargo Jund Dargo Ikra is the deck that I've been playing a lot more recently. Jund Dargo, extremely explosive deck. It just kind of wins from nowhere. It's extremely fun to play, and it's extremely unassuming. This is a deck that was built by Connor over in the Dargo Discord. He's been kind of heading this deck. I still pay homage to that by maintaining the Pirate Blender name, which is the name that he gave his. I'm only 1 or 2 cards off right now, and it's mostly, I think, just I run Zulaport Cutthroat right now to deal with One Ring and to play out or to deal with the Shuffle Titans that are starting to pop up in our little local meta.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah, damn. Shuffle Titans making a comeback.
Yeah, no, actually right before this podcast recording, I was playing a game against a double Azula Doc pod that both ran Shuffle Titans, and so I went forward on turn 2, got shut down by the Stella player, and then went for it again on 4, and got it set up. And as soon as I started going through the altar lines, they're like, "Hey, we run the Shuffle Titans. What do you do now?" I'm like, "All right, cool." And
mill myself.
Yeah. So we got there eventually, but yeah. Real quick, the deck does run a ton of dorks. Dorks are incredibly good in this deck. When I say the deck wins from an extremely unassuming position, it's literally usually land dork past turn 2, try to win the game.
God, that's hot.
It can win from extremely unassuming positions, which adds a couple of different levels of advantage to you as the pilot. One is if people don't really know what's going on with the deck or how the deck operates, they tend to divulge what they have going on in their hand to me in fear of losing to somebody else. Which is kind of funny. It's something that I found out recently when I started playing more online games and some league games and in-person games. People just hey, I don't really have anything to stop, seat one who's super developed, looks like they could probably go for a win in the next couple turns. Do you got anything for that? I'm like, well, no, I don't have anything for that, but here's my peer into the abyss.
Yeah.
So yeah, the deck's really, really fun to play. Like, it wins oftentimes. Like it wins on like a dockside for 2 more often than it really should. I played a game last week where dockside for 2 had a peer, or excuse me, I had Demonic Tutor and Burnt Offering in my hand. Dockside for 2, crack a treasure for a red, crack a treasure for a black. Use the red to cast Dargo, eating the dockside, and then use the black to get Burnt Offering, Demonic Tutor for ad nauseam, win the game.
Yeah, I'm already like, as soon as you said dockside for 2, I was like, wow, a dockside just paying for itself will get there. And then I thought, oh wait, Dargo can eat the dockside, and then the 2 treasures, as long as one is red and the other one's black, you just go.
Yep.
God, that's insane. Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, the deck is incredibly good at making mana, which also makes it incredibly awkward to mulligan. A lot of the hands that you're looking for, a lot of times will be just mana, and they can be extremely tempting to keep. Because like you're like, okay, cool, I've got, a land, I've got a mana crypt, I've got a Burnt Offering, I've got a dockside, I've got as a dork, I've got a Ragavan, and I've got another land, right? So like in my brain, I'm like, okay, cool, this is a fucking hot. I can just dump my hand. But if you don't, the odds of you drawing into a payoff are really rough in this deck, right? So you don't have too many opportunities to recover if you get blown out, and so you need to really make sure that your mulligans are really good, because if you wait too long to try to go for it in the game, you may never have a chance. Right. It's one of those turbo decks, like when Rogside was still really rough around the edges.
That's kind of where my mind goes when you say things like that, is like, hey, this goes for it, like, and if it fails at getting there, like, you just sit there the rest of the game. Yeah. And like, that was the way Rogside was, I would say, like, I felt like that was like where it was about a year ago, and now it's like people have found a way to like make it a little bit more stable. So this is also a deck, I think you were telling me, makes good use of Yawgmoth's Will.
Oh yeah, dude, Yawgmoth's Will in this deck is absolutely busted, right? And I think it's really strong in just about any Dargo deck that can play it, right? Like I also play it in Dargo Timna.
Oh yeah,
which is the deck that I'm maining right now. But like it's incredibly good in this deck, because the deck is extremely good at making mana. And B, it is really good at eating mana, eating artifacts to put them in the graveyard, right? So, a play pattern that I've done before is post-Maz, play out all of my artifacts and my mana, get my Burnt Offering, get an obscenely high count of mana, eat it all with Dargo, cast Yawg's Will, and then start assembling my whatever one attempt I'm trying to get, right? It's just the being able to replay all of your artifacts post Nas is really good.
Right. So question for you here. It looks like everything is relatively low cost on mana, like on this deck. Now, what is your average? So for you to be able to play Ad Naus, like, and Peer into the Abyss and Razaketh, and a couple other 4-drops like Calling Writ and stuff like that, even Birthing Pod, like I wonder what your average is, and like how many, like, does it impact the results of an Ad Naus by including those cards? Like, do you feel like there are times when you don't get there because like the cost of like including a Peer into the Abyss while also running Ad Naus can be detrimental?
I mean, every now and again you get a sad Nas, right? Like I don't think that that's any different than any other Adnaz deck that you're running, right?
Sure.
Like Timna Dargo, my curve is significantly higher, and it still does really really well with Adnaz. So it hasn't really hurt anything any more than I think it would anywhere else as far as Adnaz decks go. I just in the same vein as like Rogsai, right? Like the whole thing is basically just mana with your payoffs. This is in a very similar space, but because Dargo, once you kill him with still only one red mana, right? Oftentimes you can just get that red mana out and use that to start playing your what's it called, your Infernal Plunge, and then you get your Rite of Flame, and then you get your Arcane Signet, and then you get your Dargo back out, and then you get your Burnt Offering. It just kind of snowballs, right? Like you just need need so little in this deck to go so far as mana goes. So hitting things like Razaketh and Peer into the Abyss, oftentimes you can just see those and be like, okay, cool, I just need one more piece of mana, and I'll just use this to get the rest of the way through my deck.
Yeah. Wow. It sounds like once you get Dargo down to one red mana is where it gets really, really hard to stop this deck.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing you can do to try to stop this deck is like Mindbreak Trap, right? There's very little I can
for
do
sure
against that. Right?
Right.
That card fucking sucks. I hate that card. I get blown out by that card way too often. But like there's only so many ways I can deal with certain pieces of interaction. Silence blows me out. So like there's, to your point, back to your question about that, it's very difficult once the ball gets rolling on the one mana, but oftentimes that's like probably the best place to blow me out with this deck, because once I get them there in this deck, there's not too many opportunities for me to do it again without really spending time trying to rebuild my deck, and it puts me back in top deck mode. And there's no card advantage in this deck, right? My only card advantage is Bergi, the backside of Bergi. So it's really, really rough. And if you get blown out, and the best time to do it is probably right when I'm at one red.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, when you think you're getting close and they just, they stick their finger in right at the right time. That is high tier Magic playing. That is an experienced player knowing exactly when the right time to interact is. Is there anything that, like, this Jund variant that you've built that is, or at least that you've been playing for a while, what are some like significant differences in play style versus, like you said, that your Timna Dargo is like what you're main decking, like, what are some of the like style differences between like the Teamer build, the Mardu build, and the Jund build that make them so unique but also still revolve like around Dargo?
Sure. Yeah. No. So Jund Dargo, Dargo Ikra, Dargo Rayhan, whatever variant you're playing, is just a super fast deck that really doesn't do a whole lot of grinding, right? So it's your all in. I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna go for it on 1 or 2, 3 if I have to mulligan too aggressively. Turbo deck, and if I get blown out, well, I flew too close to the sun and that happens, right? Obviously,
sure.
Pick your window, but like there's no real recovery plan with this deck. Dargo Timna, Dat Farm, as I so like to call it. It's like the turbo deck that can pivot, right? This deck is more geared towards like, I can go for it on 1 or 2. I can turn Dargo into a little bit of mana and add Nas on 2, or like I can pivot into a Timna plan, right? This one I am geared more like into the Dargo plan on this, so I do treat this more towards the turbo variant than I don't want to call it the mid-range variant, but the the slightly grindier variant, I suppose, because
Sure.
I just don't want to find myself in those. I want to find myself in those situations less often. And then Teamer Dargo is it's the proactive mid range deck. If it can see the win on turn 2, it'll jump at it, but it really wants to develop some aggressive value, I like to call it, like just a way to make a ton of mana and have a strong payoff. It doesn't really do the Thrasios thing a whole lot, but it doesn't have a problem doing it if it needs to. So
yeah, I mean, there's no downside to like having Thrasios, like, because if you're able to at least generate infinite mana, which is kind of where Dargo excels.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You know, like especially in tandem with Dockside, having the Thrasios there to just say, well, do you guys have anything for this? Because I'm going to feed all of my mana into it and pick up my entire library and end the game. Where, you know, like
go over the win cons, huh?
Yeah. I know that there are a few unique cards definitely that we were talking about in your teamer build, and I'm sure the one that I want to talk about most is part of one of your win cons.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I wanted to get into that a little bit. Obviously, we run the traditional Teamer Sabertooth Dockside loops, Tidespout Tyrant Dockside with Dargo. Dargo pods into Tidespout Tyrant, which is really nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, once he's down to 1 red and with a Dockside, just makes infinite treasures for, you know, as long as you can produce 4 treasures. Which turns, you know, Neoform Eldritch Evolution into a win condition. Then we have your typical Displacer Kitten loops, Displacer Kitten, Eat Witness, and Lightning Bolt and Rite of Flame.
Beautiful.
You know, machine guns the table. But the two like reasons why we really played Dargo in this over Rograk, or I played Dargo over Rograk, is for Greater Good and Song of Creation.
There it is. That's the one.
Yep. So I guess technically I can play Song of Creation and Rog Thras, but I think it's probably a little underplayed in this deck. Greater Good is just straight up ad nauseam green for Dargo, right? You just run them through it a few times, you get your 21 cards, and then you win the game. I don't run Bergie. I've never felt the deck needed Bergie. Some people do. I think that's not a wrong way to run the deck, but usually 2 or 3 runs through it wins me the game. But Song of Creation is just incredibly cool in this deck. You know, like I said, you get Dargo down to 1 mana. He's easy to trigger Song of Creation. It's easy to kill Dargo with one of our clones, or if, you know, we have Dockside out already, we can make more copies of Dockside. The deck is just so good at generating mana and casting things for really low casting costs that you just kind of tear through the deck really quickly, make a ton of mana, and then just win the game. Like it's such a cool card.
Yeah, this is like a deck that wants to chain together a ton of spells, which is why, like you were saying, Mindbreak Trap, really, like, you hate that card because I think you know, Dargo is where you
handle that in this deck, right? Like Song of Creation, cool. Mindbreak Trap, cool. I'm gonna just cast this other instant and start digging for an answer to the Mindbreak Trap. Like, exactly. I'm not saying it's not able to stop it, but man, this card is so good. I think not to cut you off about it, but the text that you get to we should probably read the card. It's
yeah, go ahead.
Song of Creation is one green, blue, and a red. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. It's an enchantment. When you cast a spell, draw 2 cards. At the beginning of your end step, discard your hand. I've resolved this card probably 20. That's probably a bit much. Probably 12 to 15 times since I started playing it. Of those times I can remember, I've only pitched my hand twice and only lost one of those games.
Yeah,
it just wins you the game.
It's so good. I love how the ceiling is the absolute, like, the ceiling is the universe with this card, but the floor is you're in rock bottom with SpongeBob hanging out with a freaking glove balloon. Like, that's where you're at,
right?
Yeah,
right. You pitch your and it sucks to pitch your hand, right? but like we run so many draw engines in the deck anyways. By the time that you resolve this, you probably have one already. So you're probably going to draw a couple cards along the way. If not, as long as you don't top deck a land, you're back online on your next turn, right? If you're not, you've got Thrasios out, so you can start digging with Thrasios, because like by the time you have that out, you usually have a pretty decent chunk of mana. Like the card's real good.
Yeah, and especially, you know, if you have all the pieces set up, or you at least can cast, you know, you land this and you can cast probably like one or two, sometimes just that one spell is enough to give you more information, to give you more cards to like keep it rolling. And the fact that, you know, you like Dargo allows you to eat things, you can get Dargo down to 1 mana, and just like for 1 red mana, I'm going to draw 2 cards. I'm going to keep looking. I'm going to keep digging. Oh, didn't quite find it. Well, I'll sack Dargo to whatever and then keep rolling. 1 red mana. Here comes, you know, 2 more cards.
Yep. It's pretty good, right? Especially if you can get to like your free spells like Noxious Revival. Like the thing that I found with this card is as long as you have like 2 spells that you can cast, you're pretty much golden. And oftentimes one of those is just Dargo, because you're not usually casting Dargo in this deck until you're ready to win the game. And that's kind of when you hit that territory with this deck.
Sure.
This with Dargo Ikra, I only have one real win condition. It's Bergi Altar. If I can't win with Bergi Altar or Bergi Altar plus Shieldport Cutthroat, I probably lose the game. So yeah, I mean, I run Praetor's Grasp too, so like there's a world where I can seal somebody's Thoracle, but yeah, the only time that it's been relevant is under a 1 ring, so that's why I'm running the Cutthroat. If the deck just wins fast enough, most of the time people can't deal with it. But if you can remove my Berkey, I probably lose that game.
So, and probably the same to be said about the Cutthroat. You know, if you start leaning into that direction.
Yeah, like if well, I mean, like we still have the even with the Cutthroat, right? Because I have a limited number of sacrifices I can make before I just run out of steam with Berkey. Sure. I think once, if Berkey ever disappears, the only thing I can do is Praetor's Grasp and hope that I can get to my Underworld Breach, or hope that I can get to Yogg's Will of Praetor's Grasp again for you know, Thoracle, somebody else's Thoracle Consult, or get my Thoracle, or get my Tainted Pact. Sure. It's pretty rough in this deck if you get blown out, but we're typically going fast enough that doesn't matter too much. So last deck, and the reason why I jumped over to Tymna Dargo before I started talking about this to get or Tymna Ikra for those win cons, so I can at least have one deck that's in from top to bottom, right? Yeah. Gotcha. So yeah, Dargo Tymna, it's a turbo deck that that's able to pivot into a mid-range game plan. The deck is based off of Connor's, again, Connor being a big brewer in the Rakdos Dargo space, Rakdos X, Dargo Thras, I built based off of Freedom Waffles list, played his list for a long time. Just want to make sure people get their shots where they're deserved. All the credit, yeah. Yep. So this one runs a similar treasure package to what turned me on to this particular variant. Dargo Tymna is a treasure storm deck that wants to turn Dargo into 7 treasures and then loop him with Ruthless Technomancer, and then eat him with Altar of the Wretched. Is my favorite way to win with this deck. Obviously, we're also running the classic Bergi combos, or excuse me, Dargo combos with Bergi Altar, and we have Imperial Recruiter, which is kind of a 1-card win condition in this deck. And right now we're also playing Rakdos. Rakdos is incredibly strong. He does a lot. We have a lot of ways to sacrifice things in this deck. I mean, that's one card I was gonna ask you about, because Rakdos the Muscle from Outlaws of Thunder Junction, I was curious if it would was good enough, you know, that it would see play. So far in testing, it kind of fulfills a similar role in this deck as Song of Creation does in Temur Dargo, where it's in my quote unquote testing slot, but I still just move other cards out for testing because it's just been so good for me every time I've resolved it. I just haven't officially convinced myself on the cards yet.
Sure.
There is just so much sacrificing going on inherently in this deck that Rakdos just accidentally wins you the game a lot of the time. Card is super good. I didn't remove another big piece from this deck to replace it with. So it's a kind of a chunkier Nas deck now. But the one thing that I've really noticed with this deck, similar to Jund Dargo, is it's incredibly good at making mana. And in the last tournament that I played it in, I felt like I kind of struggled to find outlets for that mana. So I wanted that in there to just sort of fill that void, and it's been crushing it.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, the main combo line with Ruthless Technomancer. Another thing that I really like about the lines that I'm running is Imperial Recruiter basically can get all of the pieces to it, right? Imperial Recruiter gets Ruthless Technomancer, and also gets Magda, it gets Dockside, it gets Skirk Prospector, which Skirk Prospector, Dockside, Ruthless Technomancer is an infinite treasure loop. And it's the only one that I run without a dedicated outlet, because Skirk Prospector is just 2 Dargo mana and turns Dockside into another ritual for Dargo, and Goblin Electromancers or Goblin Engineers the same way, right? So it's been incredibly strong for me in the deck. And Imperial Recruiter also gets Magda, so once I have my Infinite Treasures online, I can just dump them into Magda. It gets me Altar of the Wretched if I need to start drawing cards to win the game. It gets me Bolas's Citadels if I already have Breach online and I can win the game with Infinite Treasures in Bolas's Citadel. Or it gets me Altar of the Wretched, or not Altar of the Wretched, Altar of Dementia, for me to just start looping Dargo through into it with my Infinite Treasures.
Yeah.
So that's my main treasure outlet for this deck. But we also have other ones. Delny and Orcish Bowmasters are a combo with Ruthless Technomancer once I have my Infinite Treasures as well.
Yeah, this sounds like a list that where the other two, like the speed is, well, kind of like off the rails, especially with like the Jund variant, where it's like you're very much like pursuing a very specific line. Like you said, like if you interact with Bergie, the game's pretty much over for you. Like that you can't get there, and then even with the Teamer variant, like they're very, like while that one is more flexible and offers you more variety, like there are still points where you can interact where it's still very fragile. This list looks where like it's far more resilient. And I don't know how like just the addition of white like gives you that. But it looks like like from everything that you're telling me, that this list provides you with a strategy that allows you to get to the mid game and ultimately get a win more effectively due to how it's structured. Maybe it's Timna that does it. I'm not sure.
I mean, yeah, I think it's so the way that I view this list philosophically is, like I said, it's a deck that wants to push for an early like turn 2 win, turn 2, turn 3 win. But it's also, because of the way it's designed, it's also a puzzle. So a lot of the pieces, it's more like I guess puzzle is a bad term for it. It's more runs on layers, right? So it does the Mardu thing where it can ask the question early, but it can also ask the question often.
Yeah, it requires a skilled pilot, like for you to be able to see the lines and run them effectively.
Sure. I mean, I'll take that compliment, I guess. I think it definitely takes some time to really see all of the different ways that you can go. Like if you look at the list that I'm running right now, the only creatures that I can't fetch with Imperial Recruiter are Ranger Captain and Rakdos, right?
Right.
So it makes mulligans kind of good, a little bit easier, because there's so many different paths that you can take based off of like just a few cards, a few of the cards that you get in your hand. And it's, I guess, a deck. I was talking to Pontus about this, because Pontus also helped develop the deck that I'm basing this off of. The deck's kind of like water, right? It's able to adjust itself and fold itself to the situation, right? It has lots of different ways to approach the game plan because of how the layers work. That like it's a lot easier for me to find a window, and I can adjust my play patterns to, I think, a wider variety of decks than I think I can. Definitely with Dargo Ikra than I think I'm at least comfortable doing with like Dargo Thrasios, despite playing Dargo Thrasios for much longer.
Right. One card that I do have a question about, which we had talked about it as Outlaws of Thunder Junction was coming out, but how has Final Showdown been working for you?
Final Showdown is a card I've been really excited to test. I put it in the deck, like I was running it in the deck as soon as it was spoiled, and I bought one the day that pre-release came out, and I went and picked it up and I put it in my deck, and I have not seen it one time.
So we're still figuring it out.
Yeah, it's running. So the downside, I guess also the upside to this deck is it takes up my board wipe slot that I had allotted for this deck, which was Dam. So it does the Dam thing for less awkward mana at instant speed, which is really good. But the downside is that oftentimes I just never really needed the Dam, so I also don't really need this very often. I'm sure it's going to be incredible when I finally get to use it, and I'm excited for that day. That day just has not come yet.
Yeah, I mean, that's the flexibility with the card, right? It allows you to turn off, creature abilities if that part of the card is relevant, or
yeah, absolutely
protect things right? If that becomes relevant, like exiling your dockside would spell the end of the game, essentially, or exiling the Burgie, So also, does it give hexproof, or is it just indestructible?
No, it's just indestructible. But like super relevant, right? Drannith Magistrate. I can't go through my breach lines if there's a Drannith Magistrate on the board.
Right. Yeah. That's where I think the greatest value is the ceiling is an instant speed board wipe.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's an incredibly strong card. I on paper, right? I have not been able to play it yet. I'm super excited for the day that it does get to happen, because especially in this deck, because destroying my creatures usually isn't that big of a deal because Ruthless Technomancer wants to reanimate it all anyways.
Right.
So getting extra use out of these cards, like in Dargo Thrasios, I get 2 uses out of my ETB creatures because I get to get the ETBs and then I get to feed them to Dargo to get them out. In this deck, I get to take advantage of their ETBs multiple times and still feed them to Dargo. And now I get to draw or exile cards off of them with Rakdos. So like the deck it to me feels like it's in a really good spot. And it's got me a couple top 16s or semi-final rounds, I guess.
Hell yeah. Are there any final thoughts on either this deck or like Dargo in its entirety that you want to like get out there for the people who are considering Dargo as a commander or for a partner pairing?
Yeah, I mean, Dargo is just a super fun, super explosive card. There's so many different ways to play or to take advantage of his ability. Sometimes he's just a what's it called, a neoform outlet into a tide spout. Sometimes you can just run him through a Razakath 6 times to assemble a win condition.
God, that's disgusting.
The Dargo math on him can be a little complicated at first, but it's just really good. He's really good, man.
Dude, when I read him for the first time, when he came out as like an uncommon in Commander Legends, I was like, are they sure they accidentally printed this? Like, this should be a mythic. This ability is crazy. In the command zone? You got to be kidding me.
Command zone. So good. And what blows me away is it took a while before people even looked at it in a cEDH mindset, right?
For sure.
So
yeah,
cool card. Glad we'll discovered it.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you coming on the show today and giving us pretty much a full spectrum on what it potentially can do. And I'm sure that as we move forward and more cards continue to come out and stimulate the strategy, that will continue to see it like unfold and develop and become even better than it is now.
for sure. I feel like I'd be doing a disservice if I didn't add this one last thing. Y'all, Razakath is a pod target in Dargo Ikra. It's the main pod target, man. And you get to pod him through there like 6 times before it's even relevant how much mana you have left. Like that deck is stupid. Turn 2, Razakath, just something else. If you like Turbo, you like Jund, play Dargo Ikra. Deck's fast.
Hell yeah. Well, I feel like we're getting here near the end. Ritter, anything to add on your end?
No, guys. You were pretty thorough.
Awesome. Well, Guy, thank you so much for being on the show today. We're so happy to have you, and I'll be reaching out in the future if for any other, because I know when you put your mind to a deck, you see it through in every facet. So I'm sure I'll be reaching out again just to pick your brain on more strategies.
Hey, just so you know, bud, I'm working on a Dargo Sidard Naya Dargo deck right now.
Well, you're right. You're walking right into my territory, which I love. Naya is not given enough respect, and I'm excited to see what you have to expand on that and to make it true that Naya can compete at the
I'll give
cEDH
you
table.
a preview of the list after this.
Hell yeah. Well, this has been the MoxStars podcast. If you want to support the show, you can find us on YouTube, where you can like, subscribe, and ring that bell for more notifications. You can also find us on all major podcasting platforms, where you can give us 5 stars, make us look really rad and really cool. And you can join our Discord community server, where, we'll have these lists up in the YouTube description, but I'm sure we'll be able to put these lists up in our Brew Buddy section just to get them out there. You can find those there on the Discord server. You can also support us directly via Patreon, where you can become an official Pepperhead for $3 a month. That'll get you 1 free entry into all of our bi-weekly giveaways. You can also become a Cherry Vanilla Pepperhead for $5 a month, like UWP Quartz, and get 2 free entries into every giveaway. And like I said, we're just delaying the giveaway, so I'll be announcing next week. All Patreon subscribers will get their additional entry, and then if you want a additional free entry into this week's giveaway, all you got to do is tell us which card is your favorite from Modern Horizons 3 so far in the YouTube comments. And if you go to last week's episode and you also leave a comment there with your favorite Modern Horizons 3 card that we talked about in that episode, you will get an additional entry. So that being said, let's get the heck out of here. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast, or to the MoxStars podcast. And we'll talk to you later. We'll see you.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye.